It's May 11th, 2020, and it's time to review 5 of the most outrageous, infuriating, or just plain baffling things that have happened lately. It's your Facepalm 5. Let's count them up. Number 1, White House officials continue to ignore social distancing rules after multiple staffers test positive for COVID-19. Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Facepalm 5. Let's get right down to it because we have kind of a good news, bad news situation as far as the COVID outbreak goes. This show that you're watching right now is going to be the first episode of the Facepalm 5 since the pandemic hit the US where all 5 segments will not be coronavirus related. So that's a good sign, I guess. The bad news is the coronavirus stuff that I am fixing to talk about is still pretty awful. In fact, it might be more awful than ever considering the fact that this stuff is still happening months into the pandemic. It's not bad enough that Trump has never taken this seriously. It's not bad enough that he shrugs off the ever-climbing number of deaths. It's not bad enough. He's obviously more concerned with how this affects his re-election prospects than with the suffering people are experiencing. He and his people have still got to go on TV on an almost daily basis and completely ignore the social distancing guidelines that the rest of us, well, most of the rest of us, have been trying to observe for the last few months. And now, the inevitable result of that irresponsible behavior has come to pass. Multiple White House staffers, people who work closely with the president and vice president, and other senior White House officials have tested positive for the virus. Katie Mueller, a spokeswoman for Vice President Pence and the wife of senior Trump advisor and kid you went to high school with who sat by himself at lunch reading a tattered copy of the Turner Diaries, Stephen Miller, tested positive for COVID-19 last week. The day before that story broke, CNN reported that one of Trump's military valets had also positive. As a result, members of the coronavirus task force, including Dr. Fauci, will be self-quarantining, which seems like a sensible precaution, especially since most people who work at the White House have apparently not been abiding by social distancing practices with any consistency whatsoever. And here's the thing, they still aren't. After the positive tests for Miller and Trump's military valet, CNN reported that Mike Pence has no plans to self-quarantine. Pence and Trump have reportedly been tested regularly and have been negative for the virus, so there's that. But as Trump himself pointed out, Katie Miller tested negative all along too, until she tested positive. Testing negative for the virus doesn't mean you're impervious to it. If you test negative, but you continue to ignore social distancing and open yourself up to potential exposure, eventually you're going to test positive. And speaking of testing, despite the fact that people who work in the White House have now tested positive for the virus, Trump has continued to question the need for testing. After commenting on Katie Miller testing positive last week, Trump went on to say, and this is a quote, "This is why the whole concept of tests aren't necessarily great. The tests are perfect, but she was tested very recently and tested negative. And today, I guess, for some reason, she tested positive." So, okay, he's not questioning the reliability of the tests because the tests, like everything, are perfect. But he thinks the whole concept of tests aren't necessarily great because Katie Miller tested negative on an earlier test, then tested positive later. But doesn't that indicate that she was exposed to the virus at some point between the last negative test and the positive test? And isn't that, important information? Doesn't that speak to the importance of testing in a situation like this? Because infected and not infected are not immutable states. One can go from not infected to infected, and the only way we'll know is if people get tested for the infection. And hey, here's an idea. Maybe try and find out who Katie Mueller might have contracted the virus from and then see who else that person might have exposed, because that could be important to know too. And maybe do that for everyone else who's tested positive too in the entire country starting several months ago. Is there a way that we can just quarantine the White House? Just block it off from the rest of the country so everyone there catches it, but they can't get out and infect anyone else? Can we do that? Because at this point, to me, that sounds like the best case scenario. Number 2, Justice Department abandons prosecution of Michael Flynn. In non-coronavirus related news, the Justice Department announced that it's planning to drop its case against former Trump National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. You may remember that Flynn admitted to lying to the FBI during the Bureau's investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election. You may also remember that Flynn is not the first associate of Trump's to have received blatantly preferential treatment from the Justice Department under Attorney General Bill Barr. Back in February, the DOJ announced that it would throw out sentencing recommendations for former Trump campaign advisor Roger Stone. The DOJ's conduct during the Stone case, if you remember, was so egregious that all 4 prosecutors who had been working on the case quit. And something similar happened last week with Flynn, shortly before the Justice Department announced it was abandoning Flynn's prosecution. The line prosecutor on the case, Brandon Van Grack — what a great name, by the way, Brandon Van Grack — withdrew from the case. Additionally, when the Justice Department submitted the official court filing to drop the case against Flynn, the filing was signed only by Barr's hand-picked U.S. Attorney Timothy Shea. No career attorneys from the DOJ were willing to put their names to it. Former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, who was fired after being accused of political bias against Trump for taking steps to investigate some of the crimes Trump committed, said the dropping of charges against Flynn, quote, has nothing to do with the facts or the law. It is pure politics designed to please the president, which could also describe literally everything else this administration has done since Trump took office in January 2017. It's not about facts. It's not about the law. It's about pleasing the fragile, all-consuming ego of the president. Actually, I take that back. It is about the law in one very important way. It's about protecting the president from the law. And theoretically, that's the opposite of what the Department of Justice is supposed to do. Number 3, Trump administration moves to block Congress from seeing Mueller investigation material. So speaking of Trump and his crimes and protecting him from the law holding him accountable for those crimes, last week, the Trump administration asked the Supreme Court to block the release of grand jury materials from the Mueller investigation to members of Congress. You know, the Mueller investigation, where Trump insisted from day one that he did nothing wrong, but continually refused to cooperate and tried to obstruct and thwart the investigation, exactly like an innocent person with nothing to hide would do. Remember? The House Judiciary Committee has been trying to get a look at the grand jury records related to the Mueller investigation as a part of its impeachment inquiry, which is still ongoing despite the Senate trial and acquittal earlier this year. The Democrats on the House Judiciary Committee have made it clear that their investigation is still ongoing, and there is still a possibility that they may bring further articles of impeachment if they find new evidence of other impeachable offenses. And they're trying to get a look at these grand jury documents from the Mueller investigation, and have been ever since last July. And Congress has been granted access to grand jury records in the past as part of impeachment investigations. So Congress asking to see these records is nothing unusual, except for the fact that Trump is the president. So everything is unusual. The Judiciary Committee first went to court to get access to the grand jury documents back in July, as I said, and this past March, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit ruled that Congress does have the right to see the records. But last week, Solicitor General Noel Francisco filed a motion with the U.S. Supreme Court asking for a stay on the order to release the documents, arguing that to do so would violate the secrecy of the grand jury. Two very important things to keep in mind here. First, the grand jury records would not be released to the public. You and I would not get to see them. Only members of Congress would have access to the records as a part of their ongoing investigation. And second, this is not unprecedented or at all unusual within the context of an impeachment investigation. But somehow, for some reason, the completely innocent and blameless Donald Trump is attempting to block the Judiciary Committee from carrying out this ordinary step in its investigation. Do you see the pattern here? You've all seen the pattern here. It's been building for years. This is completely in character for Trump and for the Trump administration. Presidential candidates have been releasing their taxes for years. Presidential candidates releasing their taxes is nothing unusual, but Trump insists that even though there's nothing incriminating in his tax records, he refuses to let anyone see them, and he goes to great lengths to block all legal efforts to get a look at them. Trump insists the Mueller investigation was a hoax, that he did nothing wrong. They found nothing on him. In fact, they exonerated him because he's so innocent, they couldn't even frame him, I guess. But then he also moves to block Congress from getting access to the grand jury records of the investigation that was fake anyway, but also exonerated him. And I know innocent until proven guilty. It's one of the most essential of all legal principles, innocent until proven guilty. But before innocence or guilt can be determined, those investigating possible crimes need to be able to examine the evidence. That is also a vital part of due process. And that's why there is a crime called obstruction of justice, because that whole getting a look at the evidence thing is really important in determining the whole guilt or innocence of it all. If you're suspected of a crime, and the cops show up with a warrant to search your house, and you say, okay, you can look everywhere except in that shoebox, and the cops say, let us see what's in the shoebox, and you refuse and go to court to stop the cops from looking in the shoebox, all the while insisting that there's nothing in the shoebox. It's just that you don't want the cops to see what's in the shoebox, because then it won't be a secret anymore. I mean, you get how that looks kind of suspicious, right? And also, you're the president? Number 4, Republican legislators vote by mail to block voting by mail. So here's a fun one that I bet you'll all get a kick out of. Republican members of the Louisiana state legislature voted against a proposal that would have expanded access to absentee ballots for the upcoming election due to the coronavirus outbreak. And this was specifically for the Louisiana primary election coming up soon, which has since been postponed. And this isn't surprising that these Republicans voted against expanding absentee ballot access, because most Republicans, from President Trump on down, have vocally opposed efforts to shift to vote by mail systems for upcoming elections, claiming that voting by mail is rife with widespread voter fraud, which there's no evidence of that being an actual widespread problem at all. And also in some cases, Republicans, such as Trump himself, have just flat out admitted that they're afraid if too many people are able to vote, their party will lose the elections. And therefore, that's a valid reason for opposing vote by mail. What makes the story from Louisiana noteworthy is the extra layer of hypocrisy it features due to the fact that the legislators were unable to meet in person to hold the vote due to social distancing in response to the coronavirus. So they voted by mail. They voted by mail against allowing citizens to vote by mail because voting by mail is dangerous and carries an increased risk of fraud. So does that mean we shouldn't trust the result of this vote from the Louisiana state legislature? When you get those mail-in ballots out there, people cheat. You've got people sitting in their living rooms signing ballots all over the place. So I've heard from the president. And by the way, this is yet another instance. There are many, many instances like this, but this is yet another instance where I am so happy that I live in the wonderful state of Maryland, because what the state of Maryland has done in response to all this coronavirus stuff is they just went ahead and mailed us all absentee ballots. I didn't ask. This is my actual absentee ballot that I can use to vote in my state's upcoming primary election. I didn't ask for this. They just sent them out to us. And in Louisiana, they just voted so that people who want one, who want to request one on the basis of being scared to go vote in person because of COVID-19, that they can't do that. So I'm glad I live in Maryland. I wish more states were like my state in this way. Anyway, now it's time for the segment devoted to some of the other things Donald Trump has done recently to disgrace the presidency and embarrass and or endanger the United States and the rest of the world. It's number 5, the further misadventures of Lord Dampnut. Please keep in mind, as always, the following is not a complete list. He responded to North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un's health scare, remember that? It was 2 weeks ago, by tweeting, "I, for one, am glad to see he is back and well." I mean, okay, I get that tweeting, "Too bad, I wish he had died," wouldn't be the most diplomatic thing to say, but you also could just have said nothing. And why is it that Trump only seems interested in being diplomatic toward thugs and dictators, while having no compunction whatsoever over saying abusive and dismissive things about heads of state of longtime American allies? It's just weird, right? How he's only nice to the dictators and the thugs and the authoritarians. I mean, what's the deal with that? He complained that a federal bailout to the states to make up for coronavirus-related budget shortfalls would be unfair to Republicans because all the states that need bailouts are run by Democrats, which A, isn't even close to being true, and B, why should that matter anyway? To anyone who isn't a fucking sociopath, I mean. He visited a Honeywell factory where respirators and masks for frontline workers and people affected by COVID-19 are being manufactured. And during the tour of the mask factory, he didn't wear a mask, despite numerous signs visible throughout the facility reminding people to wear masks at all time. And here's the best part. When he was asked about it later by a journalist, Trump claimed he did wear a mask. It's just that no one saw him wearing it, and he didn't wear it for very long. But he had a mask, okay? He was wearing a mask. Just because you didn't see it doesn't mean he wasn't wearing it. And maybe the fact that you didn't see it is just because, well, he didn't have it on for very long, but he did have it on. Technically, he did have the mask on. I swear to God, we are days away from getting a straight-faced, "the dog ate my homework" from this asshole. He lashed out at former President George W. Bush after Bush released a video calling for unity in the midst of the coronavirus outbreak. Trump's problem with the video, that Bush didn't support him during the impeachment. Bush's video didn't mention Trump at all. But as the old saying goes, a hit dog will holler. He indicated he was preparing to disband the White House coronavirus task force, then reversed course after public outcry, claiming, quote, "I had no idea how popular the task force is. Why does it matter how popular the task force is? The task force was created to deal with a problem. As long as that problem is still a problem, which it is, the task force should continue to do whatever it's doing to deal with the problem. Popularity shouldn't enter into it at all. Medicine isn't very popular with sick children, but they still have to take it." After decades of bragging about what a great baseball player he was in high school, and this is some petty shit, but God, I love this. Slate magazine, or Slate, the website, I don't even know, has Slate ever been a magazine? Am I that old and out of touch? I just assumed it was a magazine. The website Slate conducted an investigation into this idea that Donald Trump was a fantastic baseball player in high school, as he has claimed many times over the years. And please, if you're not sitting down, sit down for this bit that I'm about to say. It turns out Trump actually wasn't that great of a baseball player. And some of his boasts, such as making headlines in the local paper for hitting a home run to win a crucial game, or deciding against pursuing a career in the major leagues after attending a tryout with Willie McCovey, are demonstrably false. There was no game-winning homer. There were no headlines, at least none that the journalists at Slate could find. According to the available box scores, Trump couldn't hit for shit and was never within a million miles of being a major league prospect. And Willie McCovey was 8 years older than Trump. And by the time Trump was a senior in high school and supposedly attending this tryout, McCovey had already been playing for the San Francisco Giants for 5 years, led the National League in home runs, and had made the All-Star team. He was not at a tryout with Willie McCovey. And finally, last week, Trump called in to Fox and Friends, which, as we've discussed on this show previously, is just a thing that the President of the United States does now. And he complained about President Obama, Joe Biden, and the FBI for nearly half an hour before even mentioning coronavirus for the first time, and said, quote, "I learned a lot from Richard Nixon." We'll pause, consider that for a second. What did Trump learn from Richard Nixon? Well, here's what Trump learned from Richard Nixon. Don't fire people. Of course, that's what Trump learned from Nixon. Of course it is. It's too bad Nixon isn't still alive, actually, because if he were, he could probably learn something from Trump. Namely, he would learn, presumably to his great dismay, that it doesn't matter how much you suck at covering up your many obvious self-serving crimes, as long as nobody with the power to stop you cares enough to try. It was all for nothing, Dick. You didn't have to resign. If you just had a few more Republicans in Congress to look the other way, it was all for nothing, Dick. You should have done it like Trump did it. And just acted like you did nothing wrong and trusted that all the people on your side would have your back, regardless of how obviously corrupt everything is. Anyway, stay tuned for the post show in a minute or two. For now, that's 5. Speak out, act out, resist, and look after each other. All right, here we are back again. Let me get Superman pointed to the camera here. This is there he is. This is one of my new little treats that I got myself. I reviewed Superman Returns for my birthday episode of Late Seating, the movie review podcast that I co-host with the great Jason Harding. And I was in kind of a Superman Returns mood, so I got myself a Superman Returns action figure. So he's going to be my silent co-host for the after show tonight. So hi, everybody. Welcome to the after show of the Facepalm 5. Before we get too far into what we're going to talk about, and I'll interact with the live chat and talk to everybody. But I want to give some shout outs to my newest Patreon patrons. These are folks who have pledged $5 a month or more to my Patreon page at patreon.com/Steve Shives since the last time I shouted people out. And their names are Derek Makita. Thank you, Derek. Andre von Schobreck. Thank you, Andre. Mark Lewis, thank you, Mark. Maria, thank you, Maria. Matthew Scharnweber, thank you, Matthew. Mental Ward, thank you, Mental Ward. Corey CJ, thank you, Corey. Glenn Helwig, thank you, Glenn. HRH Chrissy J, thank you, HRH Chrissy J. Michael J. Ingram, thank you, Michael. Alexander, thank you, Alexander. Andreas, thank you, Andreas. Connie Walker, thank you, Connie Walker. Don Subert, thank you, Don. Liam Murphy, thank you, Liam. Nicholas Spitolsky, thank you, Nicholas. Town Crown, thank you, Town Crown. Mandingo NZ, thank you, Mandingo NZ. Amber Bomberger, thank you, Amber. Roger Dietrich III, thank you, Roger. Josh Coulson, thank you, Josh. Kevin Robert, thank you, Kevin. And Eugene Frazier. Thank you, Eugene. Thanks to everybody who is my Patreon patron at whatever level you are currently pledging. Thanks to everybody who supports this channel in any way, but especially to my Patreon patrons. You can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives if you want to become a patron of this channel, and I'll put that up there again at the end of the show. But for now, and I just got a super chat I see from Mary Cat. Thank you so much, Mary Cat, for the super chat. I appreciate it. And thank you to the people in the chat that I'm seeing who are offering a belated happy birthday wishes. I appreciate that too. Thank you so much. Yeah, for those of you who didn't see on social media or some other place where I mentioned it, I had my 40th birthday last week. And yeah, so it's all downhill from here, I'm told. So, yeah, thank you all for the birthday wishes, and thank you all for the congratulations and the nice wishes and the nice comments on the YouTube plaque. Can you see it? It's right there. I got my official 100,000 subscribers play button plaque. I actually got that today, and yeah, and some random geek says I'm officially a real YouTuber because I did an unboxing video for it, and yeah, so thank you for the nice things people have said about that as well. So, what all do we want to talk about in the live chat here? Let's hang out for a little while. Yes, Jesse, the plaque is shiny. The plaque is actually it's a mirror. Like the actual play button is a mirror. You can actually see yourself in it. See, look, it's you can see the back of me reflected there. See, yeah, it's I'll say too shiny. It's too shiny. Some random geek wants to talk about anarchism. What a fucking shock that is. The Kitsune Cavalier says, Stephen Stuffy had the central character out of contact. He was presumed dead and friends went through his belongings. Tholian Web. Yeah, you know what's funny is that episode was written by my friend Christopher, except for the stuff with me in the tree. I added the stuff with me in the tree to the episode because there had been another explanation in Christopher's first draft as to why I wasn't around for most of the episode that didn't really fit after some time had passed. So I decided to go back and add a little subplot with me in the tree, and I thought that would be fun anyway because I've been climbing trees lately. So the stuff that ripped off the Tholian Web with me being away and the people going through my shit, that was actually partially my fault, you know. Although actually, when I think about it, his original draft was also about me being presumed dead, so maybe he did kind of rip it off. He ripped it off first, and then I added to the ripoff. But yeah, that never occurred to me before, that there were some plot similarities to the plot of the Tholian Web. So thank you for pointing those out. It's always fun when you're such a Star Trek fan, and Christopher, of course, who wrote the episode, is also a huge Star Trek fan. So this applies to him too. It's always fun when you're such a huge Star Trek fan that you rip it off without even knowing it until someone points it out to you. That's always fun. Christy Abbey says, some question. Do I need a bra with this blouse? I'm going to say that's up to you. Michael Olson says, I feel bad thinking coronavirus should take out Trump and Pence so we get President Pelosi. Don't feel bad. Don't feel bad. I don't. I feel bad. Here's what I feel bad. Look, I would feel bad for all of the people at those factories or those events that they're still going to that could potentially be exposed and be infected by them. That's what I feel bad about. If I read that Trump or Pence had tested positive for the virus, you know what I would do? I would do this. And it wouldn't be because I'm hoping they get better. You know what I'm saying? But I wouldn't feel bad for them at all. I would feel bad for any innocent person that they may have infected due to their negligence and irresponsibility. Just like I feel bad for all the people who have been infected throughout the country because of the negligence and irresponsibility and selfishness of Trump supporters who feel like the rules don't apply to them and are just completely ignoring social distancing guidelines and have probably infected a few people along the way throughout the country. I feel bad for the people that suffer because of them. I don't feel bad for them at all. I have no pity in my heart for them. I feel bad for the people that are suffering because of their foolishness and their selfishness. Dear Alta Trekkie says, could you imagine having guest starred in the Star Trek Continues show? No. I mean, I'm not sure would I be like a random crewman? Just some dude. I guess if the people who produced Star Trek Continues had been fans of the Ensign's Log, I guess they could have had me and Jason come in to play our characters from the show. But no, I couldn't imagine, and I couldn't imagine it now because I wouldn't want to work with Vic Mignogna knowing what I know about him now. But at the time, it would have been fun, but I can't really imagine it. Neil Blumengarten, let's get Jesse Gender to 100,000 subscribers. You're goddamn right. I agree with that completely. Absolutely. Jesse deserves 100,000. A lot of people who haven't, there are people who have been doing this longer than I have, or roughly the same amount of time that I have, who have not gotten near 100,000 subscribers that deserve it, just based on the quality of their content and the quality of their character as people, deserve it way more than I do. So that's kind of, but, yeah. Okay. My screen just froze, so I'm gonna pop out and pop back in because I think that my sound and audio might be out of sync now, because of what just happened. So I'm gonna go out and come right back in. So be right back. Bear with me. Okay. I don't think it's gonna happen. But it would, it would not break my heart. Oh my God, the Mighty One says, this is a very small-minded stereotype, and the fact that I'm laughing at it does not necessarily indicate that I endorse these thoughts. But the Mighty One says, if you want Trump supporters to stay inside, tell them that their sisters are giving it out for free. They would never leave the bedroom. It's a very ugly stereotype about Trump supporters and incestuous behavior, and it's a really ugly thought. And shame on you, Mighty One. Shame on you for saying that. 255 AD says, what did you mean when you said the Hulk is a creature of the desert? I think I said that during the late seating review of the movie, right, of Ang Lee's Hulk. Just that in the comics, the Hulk was created in the desert. The original, like the nuclear accident in the comics that exposed Bruce Banner to the gamma rays and created the Hulk took place in the desert. The Hulk is, and in the movie, you know, the Hulk, he seems at home when he's leaping through the desert. You know, he seems like a creature of the desert. He's a creature of the atomic age, and the atomic age is largely was developed and took place in the desert, in the middle of nowhere, at least here in the United States. That's where the tests were done. That's where the research was done to create the atomic bombs. Not all the research, but a great deal of it. That's where all these military bases were located, where these bombs were created and built and exploded to test them. So the Hulk is a creature of the desert in that sense. His origins are wrapped in with the desert. And that's why I find those scenes in Ang Lee's Hulk of him in the desert so lyrical and so beautiful. Because you have this utterly unnatural creation, the Hulk, who in a certain way is the embodiment of the nuclear age, of atomic technology, of atomic weaponry. And yet he is right at home in the desert, because it is from there that he was produced. Some Random Geek says, I like the Ang Lee Hulk movie. Thank you, buddy. I do too. I think it's terrific. 255 AD says, I saw this one earlier and I forgot to answer it, so thank you for reposting it. Is Steve in Steve and Stuffy also a YouTuber? Yes. Yes. And I have an idea for how I'm going to acknowledge that in the next Steve and Stuffy episode. I think I'm going to go for it. I have a concept that I think I'm going to use that will allow me to still do the episode I had planned on doing, but also to throw that in there somewhere. And I have to do it this coming week, because this week's new episode of Steve and Stuffy that comes out on Friday will be the last new episode until the fall. Because after this week, the Whirlpool comes back for another 3 months. And then there'll be a little break. I'll probably take a break at the end of the summer where I just don't do any videos on Friday. I just kind of take a month off, at least as far as Friday videos go. And then in September, Steve and Stuffy comes back. So Steve and Stuffy after this week doesn't come back again until September. So I have to, if I want to acknowledge the plaque, you know, in a timely manner in Steve and Stuffy, I have to do it this week. So I think I'm going to do it this week. I have an idea. Francois Lacombe says, what do you think of the failed coup in Venezuela? I honestly don't know a lot about it, so I can't comment on it. I haven't been paying attention. That's my own fault. 255 AD says, if Fox News existed in the 70s, would Nixon have not had to resign? That's a really, really good question. I wonder if that is true. If Fox News or some equivalent had existed in the 70s and basically just shamelessly cheerled for Nixon no matter what, and pushed a skewed narrative in his favor relentlessly to a significant portion of the population, and legitimized it so much that legislators and other elected officials could adopt that viewpoint, yeah, it's possible he wouldn't have had to resign. I mean, because Trump hasn't had to resign. There's never been a point. I mean, Trump should have resigned years ago, but there's never been a point where it actually looked like he was going to, despite his egregious offenses. So yeah, I think you can make a really good case that had Fox News existed and been as influential in the culture back then as it is today, that Nixon would not have felt the need to resign. Christy Abbey says, weeping for no Steve content. Oh, there'll still be plenty of content. It'll just be scaled back for a month. I think after about the month before Steve and Stuffy comes back full time, I'll probably just not do a video on Friday. I'll still do videos on Wednesdays, and I'll still do live streams. I'll keep up with the Facepalm 5s and Askaways every other week for that month, but there won't be anything on Friday probably. The mighty one says, or the might one says, Nick Nolte's scenery chewing in the Hulk is up there with William Shatner. Nick Nolte is so good in Hulk. He is so good. We quote him around the house all the time. I love the scene near the end when David Banner Nolte's character is face to face with Bruce, and they're having this really tense exchange, and he gives this really florid, just over the top supervillain monologue. And Bruce responds by screaming at him to go. And David kind of, makes fun of him and goes like, yeah. And then he goes, all right, I'll go. You just watch me go. And he like picks up this, high voltage cable and bites it. And it's like, oh my fucking God, are you serious? Is this a real movie? I love that scene. I love that scene so much. And Nolte is he's fantastic in the whole movie. Oh, D. Hi, D. D. Marie Malloy says, what are your thoughts on Trump attacking PA and all the Democrat governors today? Well, that's just what he does. He's just an asshole. I love when Republicans accuse Democrats of being too partisan. I love when Republicans say, "Oh, the Democrats are making everything too political. It's too partisan." Trump has said, as I said in the first part of the video, he said that stuff about how, if the federal government were to bail out the states for their budget shortfalls related to the coronavirus, well, that wouldn't be fair because all the states that need money are run by Democrats. Like everything is an us versus them with him. And that's not even true. I mean, the states that wind up taking more in federal money than they contribute in taxes are mostly controlled by Republicans. And I've never heard of a Democrat saying, well, we'd love to give disaster relief to Alabama, but it just wouldn't be fair because, the Democrats are controlling Congress and the Republicans are running Alabama. And how is that fair to us? Like, it's not the Republicans' money. How can Trump say like, well, it's unfair to the Republicans for these Democratic states? It's not the Republicans' money. It's our money. It's the federal government's money. It's not Republican or Democrat. And as for attacking Pennsylvania, yeah, he tweeted that thing today about how the people of Pennsylvania want their freedom. I mean, I have to go back to my metaphor from the end of the proper Facepalm 5 segment tonight, where, it doesn't matter whether the people want their freedom or not. We're in an intractable situation, and we just have to behave in a certain way until it's over. Little children who are sick don't like to take their medicine. They still have to take it. If you have a sick child and you don't give the child the medicine that they need to get better, and your excuse is, well, little Stevie just didn't want to take it. He wanted his freedom from the bad tasting medicine. That means you're a bad parent. You're a bad parent if you allow your child to not take the medicine because he would prefer not to take it. Because he's in a situation where he has to take the medicine to get better. And social distancing and quarantining and having most places closed and, having to wear a mask when you go out to the store, it's a pain in the ass. I don't like doing it either. But it's what we have to do until all of this is over with. For everybody's own good. It doesn't matter whether you want your freedom or not. Your wants and desires are irrelevant. And it sucks that Trump is picking on, Democratic governors and making it out to be like, well, they're the ones that are keeping the people from exercising their freedoms when they're not the ones who spread the virus. The virus affects everybody, and everybody has to deal with it. So yeah, it's typical. It's what Trump always does, but it's especially egregious. For in a time like this, where 80,000 people in this country alone have died from it. It's going to be probably by the end of this month. I saw an estimate today. By the end of this month, it's probably, if it continues at the same pace that it currently is, it'll cross 100,000 people. 100,000 people by the end of May. Right? For all these people who say, oh, it's just the flu, it's no worse than the flu. The flu typically kills, 50,000, 60,000 people a year? This thing will have killed 100,000 people by the end of May. It's not the fucking flu. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, what else is there to say about it? He's a horrible, horrible human being, and he's the worst person imaginable to be in charge right now or anytime, but especially now. So let me scroll back up through the chat to see some of the questions I missed while I was ranting there. Robert Mills says, how would Star Wars change with Nick Nolte as Solo? You're referring to young Nick Nolte. Yes, I think I heard that too, that he read for it or auditioned for it or something. It would have been different. I don't know. It would have been different. I mean, young Nolte and young Harrison Ford were actually fairly similar. I don't know if it would have been all that different. Nolte seemed to age a lot quicker than Harrison Ford did. So by the time you got to Return of the Jedi, you might have seemed like you had a slightly older Han Solo than you had with Ford. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it would have been different, but it probably wouldn't have been as different as a lot of people thought. And I just want to mention, I missed a super chat a few minutes ago from Saint Swibbins. I want to acknowledge that. Thank you so much for the super chat, Saint Swibbins. It says, here, have $20. Hope to come back to patron status soon. Well, thank you very much for that. I really, really appreciate it. Whether you can be a patron or not, I appreciate the support in whatever form it comes. I thank you for that very much. Yeah, and PZ also points out, we also know the numbers are an underestimate. Yes, those are just the official numbers. The official death toll is estimated to cross 100,000. I mean, 100,000 people. If we know officially that 80,000 have died, it's probably over 100,000 already. We just don't know. It may, in fact, be very, very, very far over 100,000. We don't know because we weren't testing people. We weren't testing people seriously until what, like a month ago? I mean, so yeah, it's all fucked up. It's just all fucked up, the whole situation. 255 AD asked, how's Michael Worley going to fold the virus into his worldview? Is he going to say it's God's punishment or a deep state hoax? Knowing Michael, and I haven't written anything yet, so I don't know for a fact, but knowing Michael Worley, it's probably both. He's probably going to find a way to say that it's both. Duralte Trekkie says, in Germany, people are crying, me, we want to go out. And I'm like, are you nuts? There is a freaking pandemic. Yes, it's the same way here. And I have the exact same response. What the hell is wrong with you people? What are you talking about? I sympathize to an extent. Like, we all want to go out, but you just can't. It's like saying, it's like your house is on fire right now, and you're out on the sidewalk whining to the firemen, I want to go back in my house. Well, I'm sorry, man. You can't go back in your house. Your house is on fire. You can't go back in. I know you want to, but you can't. Like, how do you tell people? How do you convince someone that it's not in their best interest to go back into a building that is on fire? But that's the situation that we're in with all these people, these clueless fucking dipshits who, I guess they figure it's just been long enough. Like, the numbers mean nothing. The actual state of the pandemic is irrelevant. They just sort of decided based on nothing that it's been long enough and it's okay for everything to go back to normal now. And how do you talk them out of it? If they think that the fire is out, even though they're standing right in front of the still burning building, and they're capable of looking you right in the eye and saying, I don't think it's on fire anymore. We should be able to go back in. Like, how do you talk them out of that? How do you talk them out of that? Music Cassette says, do you think wearing a mask protects you? I have heard it said that the point of wearing the mask isn't so much to protect you, but if you are a carrier of the virus unbeknownst to yourself, that it protects other people from you. Because if you do have the virus and you happen to cough or sneeze, the mask, presumably if it's a proper mask with enough layers or whatever, will stop you from spreading that out. So that's the idea behind the mask. It's sort of counterintuitive. You think like, well, I wear a mask to protect myself. But according to what I've read, it's actually the other way around. You wear the mask so that just in case you are unknowingly a carrier of the virus, you don't spread it to others. That's my understanding, but I don't know. Another super chat from from VovaCat17. Hi, Steve. I was recently asked why I am not outraged by the White House not mentioning the USSR in their end of the World War II message, only US and Britain. What's the usual view of World War II in America? The Russian contribution is extremely downplayed for the most part here in the United States. We learn, like just for me going to a public high school and learning about World War II in my history classes, and World War II, we studied it extensively in my school career. Like we studied World War II multiple times over the years that I was in school, in middle school and in high school, and even I think I had to take a course about it in college. And the role of Russia in the Allies is very, very underplayed. The Eastern Front in general is largely ignored, which is a shame when you think of how, I mean, that was some of the worst part of the war. I mean, the Russians suffered more losses really than certainly than any of the victorious powers did in World War II. And here in the United States, that contribution and that role played by how important the Russians were to defeating the Nazis is really, really underplayed in our history. We take a lot of the credit for ourselves and we share the credit with the British, but we don't give a lot of credit to the Russians. And I think a lot of it is because of the Soviet thing, because they, that turned into the Cold War very soon after World War II, and we're sort of conditioned to view the Russians as our enemies for so long. But it's not surprising. As an American, to me, it's not fair, but it's not surprising that Trump, or really any American president, would not mention the Soviet role in defeating the Nazis, because it's really, really undersold, generally speaking. 255 AD says, am I the only person who regularly confuses Dennis Quaid with Harrison Ford? I don't know if you're the only person, but I've never done that. I can't go with you on that. 255 AD says, is it reasonable to tell people they can't go out and work if we're not giving them UBI? No. And the thing is, like, even if you don't, if for whatever reason you don't support universal basic income, like as a long-term enduring program, the fact that there has not been a far more robust like capability or effort to pay people to stay home during this is absolutely egregious. Because people, like, I mean, I'm all aboard. I'm totally on board telling people they can't go to work to stop the spread of the virus. Like, we should be saying stay home. But in addition to saying stay home, because people have to stay home, or most people, because people who, except those who are essential workers, have to stay home, those people should be getting money from the government. They should be getting more than just one stimulus check. Like, my wife and I got our stimulus check a couple weeks ago. We each got $1,200, and that's nice. Don't get me wrong. We could use the money. Like, it went right into the savings account, and we're really happy to have the money. But if I were someone who was out of work as a result of this, and I was not getting paid, and my bills were piling up, and I was starting to worry about, even if you're in a situation where your landlord is not charging you rent for the next couple of months, or your power company is saying, look, you can defer payment, like, all of those bills are going to come due eventually. You're going to have to pay that eventually. So if I was in that situation and I had lost all this income, I would not be happy with just a one-time $1,200 check. I'd need at least one of those every month until this is over. And Bernie Sanders suggested $2,000 a month, which is even better. That really hasn't gone anywhere. But yeah, it's outrageous that we're telling people quite reasonably, quite rightly, that they have to stay home, but we're not making it easier financially for them to do so. It's terrible. It's terrible. Let me see here. Oh, Duralta Trekkie says, who would you cast as the crew of the USS Excalibur from the Peter David book canon? Who would be your version of Mackenzie Calhoun? I haven't read too many of the New Frontier books, so I can't really speak to, you know, who I would cast for the different characters. I mean, obviously isn't Shelby one of the characters? So you could, I mean, if Elizabeth Dennehy is still available, just go ahead and cast her because she actually played Shelby on the show. But as for Calhoun, I don't know. I mean, when I see drawings of him and I think about it, I always sort of think David Tennant. I don't know if David Tennant would be at all right for the character because I don't know the character, but just seeing him seeing how he supposedly looks, like on the cover of the books and stuff, I think, I mean, in recent years, I think David Tennant, but I don't know. That could be completely wrong. Oh, Jesse Gender says Tom Hardy as Calhoun. Okay, sure. I'll put Tom Hardy in just about anything. 255 AD says, should we forgive Shoe on Head? I have no plans to. I mean, how many times have we been through this? How many times have we been through this? I don't think we should. I am not going to. I have not asked or expected any apology, and I have no plans to offer any forgiveness. She can go to hell. I mean, how many times have we been through this? Oh, she's changed. She's different. She turned over a new leaf. She's not like that anymore. Come on. No, I don't. It's up to you. It's up to each individual what you want to do. But for me personally, no, of course not. No. She's a bad person. She associates with bad people. She makes excuses for bad people. She apologizes and fraternizes and tries to legitimize and carry water for bad people. No. Another super chat from Vovacat17 says, Russia uses it as a reason to show off new tanks. I hate people who say we can repeat that. Russia is scary alt-right now. But the person who asked me, both her grandfathers never came back. Yeah. Thanks again for the super chat there, by the way, Vovacat. Duralta Trekkie, the doctor is Calhoun. Amazing idea. Okay, cool. I'm glad that I backed into that. Douglas Sharon, I love your Superman Returns action figure. Thank you. I love it too. It's my favorite new toy. And the best part is it's roughly in scale with the Star Trek figures I have for my comics. So guess who's going to guest star in an upcoming Star Trek comic? Not real soon, because I have them written so far ahead that I have to get there first. But yes, I already know how Superman will guest star in an upcoming one of my goofy, silly Star Trek action figure photo comics. Let me see. Music Cassette says, what is the Shoe on Head context? Shoe on Head is a shitty person with a YouTube channel who became very popular by being a shitty person who appealed to alt-righters and white supremacists and anti-feminists, and jumped on the bandwagon making attack videos about Anita Sarkeesian and me and Riley Dennis and a bunch of other people, and is basically just a shitty person who built a large lucrative following by being an aggressively shitty person, and every so often, plays victim and tries to pretend that actually she's not that bad of a person, you guys, and she just wants to be friends with everybody. And as far as I'm concerned, she can go to hell. But that's roughly the context. Gage Sphere. Brandon Routh, I love him as Superman. Very underrated. I agree. I think he was a fantastic Superman. And I mean, I love Tyler Hoechlin, who is Superman in the Arrowverse now, who's the Superman on Supergirl. I think he is amazing. I love Tyler Hoechlin as Superman. I love the way he plays him. I love the way they write that character on the show. But I look at Brandon Routh. I look at Brandon Routh now, and he's my age. He's like 40. I think he might be a little older than he might be 1 or 2 years older than me. But I look at Brandon Routh now, and he looks basically the same that he looked in Superman Returns, only just a little more mature. Like he's grown into himself a little bit. And I think, Jesus Christ, how did this guy not get cast as Superman for life? Like if there was ever someone born, just in how he looks physically and his personality, he seems genuinely like such a nice guy. Like if there was ever anyone born who ought to have been tied up contractually for the rest of his life to play Superman in movies and on TV and whatever, it's Brandon Routh. And the fact that he's only ever played him in one movie and a couple of episodes of the Crisis crossover on the CW, which he did, which was great. But like that's all the Brandon Routh Superman we've ever gotten. And God, that is a shame because he was so good. He's so good as Superman, a grossly underrated Superman. D, thoughts on Supergirl's Lex? I really like Supergirl's Lex. John Cryer. I think he's a great Lex. It's a very different Lex than we've seen before because he's more of a weasel. He's like, he's a perfect, I think the way I put it before, when I first watched him was he's a perfect TV Lex. Because he's not as like big and impressive, and he's not like an actor of great stature like other actors have played Lex, and he doesn't quite have the charisma that Gene Hackman had when Hackman played him, and he doesn't really have like the menace or the intelligence that John Shea had when John Shea played him on Lois and Clark. But I love John Cryer's Lex because he seems like just a little weasel. And you don't necessarily think of Lex as being that kind of character when you read him in the comics or think of other versions of Lex, but it really, really works. Like I think Supergirl's Lex is fantastic. I think it works perfectly for the tone of that show, and I really hope we see more of him in the Superman and Lois show because I think he's a terrific Lex. Another super chat from Vovacat17. Don't want to seem insensitive, but how do I fight my internal transphobic uncanny valley if my in real life society is not ready to represent trans people? I think you just need to you need to remind yourself to do better. I mean, I live in an area where, transphobia is rampant in my area, but racism is as well, arguably to an even greater extent. There were times in my coming of age where I had to check myself and remind myself that that's not the way to think, that those attitudes are not right and not fair and not representative of reality. And you just have to you have to correct yourself. You have to remain open-minded, and you have to remain open to growth and change. And, if the society around you is incredibly transphobic and you have certain transphobic instincts in you as a result of being brought up in that society, you just have to remain aware of that and correct for it. I mean, that's the best I can tell you. A couple of people have pointed out that Cryer played he was Lex's nephew in Superman 4. Absolutely. Oh, and someone else mentioned Michael Rosenbaum from Smallville. Michael Rosenbaum's Lex in Smallville was fantastic. He was the best part of that show. I kind of ducked out of Smallville after about season 4 or 5. I just kind of lost interest in it. But it hit a sweet spot around season 2, maybe season 3, and for seasons like 2, 3, and 4 maybe of Smallville, that was such a good show. And Rosenbaum's Lex was fantastic. And John Glover as Lionel, as Lex's dad, so good. Oh, Jesus. Yeah, the Luthor stuff on Smallville, when the show was cooking, was so good. The sound is off. Okay, let me jump out and jump right back. Be right back. Okay, is this any better? I hope. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, Rosenbaum was a great Lex. John Cryer is a great Lex on Supergirl. And yeah, I saw D earlier in the chat mentioned, yeah, there is going to be a Superman and Lois show. I'm pretty sure it's been picked up to series. They were going to do a pilot, and I think it's been picked up for a season. Although I don't know, given all the COVID stuff and how everything is sort of frozen and everything's out of production, I don't know how long it'll be before we actually get to see it now. I'm not sure how far into shooting it they actually got, but yeah, it was last year. It was actually, I think it was either late last year or early this year. It was right around the time when they did the Crisis crossover. It was announced online. I don't think they've announced it on TV, but they announced it online that Tyler Hoechlin and Elizabeth McCulloch as Lois were going to do Superman and Lois. So yeah, I'm really excited. I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah, okay. Davlin says it's been picked up for ages. Yeah, yes, they cast the Sons. Yeah, so it sounds like it's going to be there. It's at least going to get a season, and hopefully it'll get picked up for more than that, because I get the feeling with Arrow ending, they want to kind of beef up the Arrowverse shows. And I mean, it's in a way it's kind of nice that they waited so long to bring Superman in as a major character, because now Superman can come in and freshen up the whole thing, with the other shows kind of starting to age a little bit. So yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty exciting. Biddy Tulloch. That's it. Biddy Tulloch. Elizabeth Tulloch, not McCulloch. Sorry. Yeah. Elizabeth Biddy Tulloch plays Lois in the Arrowverse, and she's fantastic. She's wonderful. Jesse, I'm right in the same boat. I have not been able to keep up with the Arrowverse shows regularly for a long time. I try to sort of check in every now and then on Flash and Legends and Supergirl, especially Supergirl. Supergirl was the only one that I ever really made a serious effort to watch all through. But even that I've been kind of just sort of peeking at every now and then, because there's just so much. There's so much shit to watch, and I have so much to do, and something's got to give. So I did watch all of the Crisis crossover. I watched every episode of that, but I haven't. I've been way behind on all of those shows. So I'm completely on. I totally know where you're coming from with that. And generally speaking, I think the Arrowverse is terrific. I think the Arrowverse is one of my favorite, attempts to adapt the DC heroes in a very, very long time. Oh, and just no, I have not seen the Harley Quinn show. It looks really good. It looks so much better than I thought it would be. When I first saw the trailer for it, before the first season, I thought, no, this isn't for me. This isn't. It seemed like, ooh, they're doing an edgy adult DC cartoon, and it just looked fucking terrible. But then the reviews have been really good, and the clips I've seen of it seems like a really, really smart show. So I'm gonna have to check it out at some point, because it looks really good. It looks so much better than I thought it would be. I assumed it was just going to be a disaster, and it seems like it's a really good show. Serrano Geek says, are you binging the 4 seasons of She-Ra in time for the upcoming final season? No, I'm just going to watch the final season. Der Alta Trekkie says, but Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is amazing too. Yes, it is. And I'm looking forward to the last season of that as well. Now, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is a show I have kept up with. Oh God, I love Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm going to be sorry to see that show go. But this upcoming season is the final season. But I'm really, it's been terrific. Vova Cat, another super chat. Me and my quarantine neighbor friends just finished rewatching Doctor Who season 5. The Pandorica has opened. Just try to feel what I feel now. I haven't watched it, so I can't say. I started a little bit into the the newer seasons of Doctor Who, and I got a little bit into Tennant's first season, and then I just kind of stopped watching. Not because I didn't like it, like I actually really liked it. I just didn't have time to keep watching it, and I just kind of set it aside and never got back to it. But I did enjoy what I watched of it. Oh, and Jesse, I did see the clip on Twitter of the Snyderverse, the Snyder cut takedown that they did on the Harley show. That was hilarious. That was so funny. And some random geek. The Harley show it's on DC Universe. I don't know if it's available anywhere else right now. It's on the DC Universe streaming app, and you might be able. I assume it might be available like on Amazon Prime if you pay for it, if you buy the episodes or buy the season. But I know it's right now. I think it's only streaming on the DC Universe streaming service. And I don't know if it's going to be one of the. I don't know if it's going to be on the HBO service when that starts or not. Because a lot of the DCU stuff is also going to be on the HBO service as well, but I'm not positive. Another super chat from Vovacat17 says, "Just watch Smith's season 5." I'm going to get through all of it eventually, I think. Okay, so I believe I'm going to start wrapping up now. We've been going for almost an hour and a quarter now, and it's been so much fun, but I do have to go off and do something else at some point. Even though I would love to hang out with you all like the rest of the night, because this has been a really good show, I think. So I want to remind you once again, as I did at the beginning of the post show, that besides if all the super chats, which have been incredibly generous this time, and I thank you all for that. If you want to support the channel in a more sort of ongoing way, you can become a patron at patreon.com/Steve Shives, and patrons can submit questions early for Ask Away and make sure your Ask Away question gets answered. And if you pledge $5 a month or more, you get a shout out at the end of the Facepalm 5 right here, which is very cool. And another super chat from Vovacat17. Thanks for all the fun, Steve. Well, thank you very much for your generosity, my friend. And thank you for showing up and watching the show and hanging out with us in the chat. It's great to have you. I also want to remind you, in addition to the YouTube stuff, I co-host a couple of podcasts as a part of the Let Me Listen podcast family. There's a Late Seating, the movie review podcast, where Jason and I review movies that have a reputation of either being good or bad, and we decide for ourselves whether they deserve those reputations. The most recent episode was my special birthday episode, where we reviewed Superman Returns, and our next episode coming up in 2 weeks will be Jason's birthday episode, because he is also a May baby, where we're going to review The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai. So that'll be a fun show too. And also, of course, there's the Ensign's Log, which is the Star Trek themed comedy podcast, where Jason and I portray low-ranking officers serving aboard a certain famous Federation starship as it embarks on a certain historic 5-year mission. We're currently in Season 3 of the Ensign's Log, our final season in the world of classic Trek, and it's been a great one so far, and hopefully it will continue to be. It's been a ton of fun, so check out the Ensign's Log, especially if you enjoy my Star Trek stuff. Links to everything are in the description. Also, don't forget the charity links in the description of the video. Thanks to our friend Some Random Geek. All the charity links have been collated into a Google Doc that has been linked in the description of the video, so you can just click on the link and go to the Google Doc and see all of the links for our friends who need a little bit of help, and descriptions of who everybody is and what the nature of their need is. And if you can possibly click that link, check out that charity document, and just if you have a few bucks to throw towards some of our friends who need some help, it would be greatly appreciated. Or if not, share the links, or share the link to the charity, the Google Doc, so that other people can be made aware, and just spread the word a little bit, because some of our friends unfortunately need some help, and it's every little bit helps. Every little bit really helps. Yeah. That's it, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for bearing with me with the audio problems and the video problems. I appreciate all of you being with us live for the live chat, and hope you enjoyed the show. And that's it. I'll see you on Friday for a brand new Steve and Stuffy premiere, and then after that for a new edition of Ask Away. So I'll see you then. Have a good week. Until then, everybody, take care. Please be safe, and I'll see you in a little bit.